Seahawks fans, do you love your Seattle Seahawks? Hey, John Schneider, he said this week at the Combine that he wants to see the 12s rally and be loud again at Lumen Field and, quite frankly, give the fans something to root for with their defense and their run game. So what better way to rally up the 12s than by getting loud in that comments section? I want you to spam S in the comments as if you're sitting in your seats at Lumen Field. Let's set the tone right here, right now. I want to get at least 300 S's in the comments section. Do your part, and we'll get started with this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today. Thanks for stopping by here on today's show. Tyler Joltz with you. Appreciate you joining us. We have a major update to get to on Myles Garrett and the potential possibility of him heading to Seattle here on the program, as we were given some interesting information this week from Seattle Seahawks insider Michael-Shawn Dugar of The Athletic, as he laid out the offseason agenda, the game plan for John Schneider and company of what they potentially could accomplish, what they could be looking to do. And one of the things that he did was he linked Seattle to possibly bringing in Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns. If you recall, just before the Super Bowl, Myles Garrett made it known that he wanted to be traded from Cleveland. We kind of talked about that possibility, and it seemed like the Seahawks were kind of an outside factor, but Michael-Shawn Dugar seems to think that this is a realistic possibility. Here's more what he had to say in The Athletic this week. Schneider prides himself on being on every deal, and for now, the Browns are supposedly uninterested in trading all-pro pass rusher Myles Garrett, but if he becomes available, would Schneider get in on the action? I would be surprised for a number of reasons, which I will lay out here in just a moment, but here's the nature of the beast. This isn't impossible. There is a greater than zero chance that Myles Garrett ends up in Seattle. It's a two-step process, right? It's one, the Browns have to actually start shopping him, which it doesn't sound like they've done just yet. And then Seattle would have to position themselves to be a worthy buyer, have the best offer compared to other teams that would be interested in Myles Garrett. And the price tag is where things start for me of having some issues here. The price tag is just so insane when it comes to Myles Garrett of what it's going to cost to potentially bring him to Seattle, or for any team for that matter. Friend of the show, Diana Rossini from The Athletic, had this to say a while back when the news came out that Myles Garrett was looking to seek a trade. One NFL GM on what Myles Garrett could look like a trade, probably a 1+. Can't wait for it will be 3 1s crowd, not happening. Probably a 1 and a 2, 1 and 2 3s, throw in a player in there. And I think when you're the Seattle Seahawks, you get some deja vu of sorts where you think back to the mishap that was the Jamal Adams trade, the worst trade in the history of this franchise. And you fear with these big trades for defensive players that if you make the mistake like you did with Jamal Adams, that you mortgage your future and you bring in a player that gets banged up, that doesn't do much, and you hurt yourself down the line. I'm not saying that would happen with Myles Garrett, but that's at least the big fear in the back of your mind, is that it's not a guaranteed. It's not a foregone conclusion that this is going to work. So let's ask you, should the Hawks trade for Myles Garrett? It's our pinned comment today. Type T for trade, P for pass. Weigh in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Seahawks Today is covering your Seattle Seahawks like no one else is with our daily news and rumors. We're bringing you live shows twice a week. We're also talking breaking news, Q&A mailbags. We're all over the NFL Draft Combine this week. We got a team in Indianapolis that's bringing you nonstop coverage of everything you need to know ahead of the NFL Draft. We're also talking trades and free agency like you're seeing here on today's show. If you love the Seattle Seahawks, you're in luck because this is the channel for you. We just passed up 63,000 subscribers recently, and we're not stopping there. Subscribe now for free. YouTube.com/SeahawksTV. I believe we can get at least 30 subs off today's video. If you love the Hawks, you love yours truly, you found the right place. Subscribe now. You'll be glad you did. Now, let me say this. When it comes to Myles Garrett, the talent level is exceptional. All right? No one is knocking how good Myles Garrett is. He is arguably the best defensive player in the NFL. I have concerns about his character. I've always been a Mason Rudolph fan. I liked him when he was at Oklahoma State. I still am not over what he did to Mason Rudolph using the helmet on his head and then the fake racism allegations, which were proven to be false on Myles Garrett. So that's always got to rub me the wrong way when it comes to Myles Garrett. But for me, I don't see his cost of what it would take to bring him in being worth it of what you would lose in order to bring him in. And it's a two-step process. Let me explain a little further. We know the resume is fantastic. Myles Garrett's a future first-ballot Hall of Famer, 4-time first-team All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler, NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. All of that is good. The production, fantastic. Coming off back-to-back seasons with 14 sacks, 16 sacks in 2022 and in 2021. All the numbers are there. They are just incredible. But it's all about the Benjamins, as everybody knows. Show me the money. And this is where it gets a little difficult. On his current contract as is, he has 2 years remaining on a 5-year, $125 million deal. That's not cheap. That includes a cap hit for this upcoming season that's close to $20 million as is. And then you take it a step further of what Myles Garrett is looking to get once that contract ends in his next deal. According to Spotrac, it's going to be about a 4-year, $137 million deal is what he's worth. So not only do you have to pay him his current money, but then you're looking at a long-term extension. And then there's the trade. And we told you what Rossini said when speaking to an NFL GM. A lot of the ideas that are being thrown out there as of right now anyway is that the Browns are looking for 2 first-round picks. And so with that being said, you're looking at giving up this year's 18th overall pick and next year's first-round pick in order to bring in Myles Garrett. That's just too expensive. That is just over the top for me. That is a bridge too far. And that's not the only thing you would have to give up. DK Metcalf. I'll tell you more about him and his situation, but let's just put it this way, folks. You bring in Myles Garrett, you're not going to have DK Metcalf either. I'll explain more here in just a moment. Is Myles Garrett worth 2 first-round picks? Chime in, let us know. Type Y for yes, N for no. Way in the comments section, let us know what you think. Seahawks hats are on sale now for up to 50% off at chatsports.com/Seahawks hats. You got the baseball cap style, you got the flat bill version, and all sorts of hats to choose from. Not just the ones you're seeing on your screen, but plenty of others that you can go check out for yourself. It's all in one place, chatsports.com/Seahawks hats to get yours today. And we have plenty of other Seahawks gear that you can go see at chatsports.com/Seahawks hats. A lot of variety, great selection to choose from. Link is in the comments and description of today's video. That's chatsports.com/Seahawks hats. So now, the DK Metcalf part of this equation. Let's dive into that. If you trade for Myles Garrett, you don't necessarily trade DK Metcalf to Cleveland in this sense, although you could. But it would almost certainly mean that you're going to have to trade DK Metcalf to make up for the draft capital that you would have lost in a trade to bring in Myles Garrett, because you're going to need some of those younger players and also guys on cheaper contracts. It would be very difficult to pay both Myles Garrett and DK Metcalf. And most people are thinking right now that DK is worth about a second plus a player in a trade of what you would be getting in his value at this point in time. Metcalf, he has a cap hit coming up this next season of close to $32 million. He's projected to get his next contract around 3 years, $76.5 million. I think in all likelihood that in the coming weeks we see Seattle get an extension done with DK Metcalf and bring down his cap number for this year. And I think that's the most likely situation. You just can't pay Garrett and Metcalf. That's just way too much money. And you're also losing out on those draft picks we mentioned here. If you bring in Myles Garrett, you pretty much have to say bye-bye to DK Metcalf based on how that goes. And I don't want to say goodbye to DK Metcalf. DK, I have defended this guy through thick and thin. I know it's frustrating, the antics that he does from time to time, believe me. But at the end of the day, there's a whole lot more good than there is bad when it comes to DK Metcalf with what he brings to this team, and not to mention the attention that he is able to take away from Jackson Smith and Jigba and make life easier on JSN to thrive in the way he is. They complement each other. And even last year, when he was banged up, for the most that we've seen in his entire career, he still nearly had 1,000 yards. He still nearly had 1,000 yards with JSN having a season with close to 1,200 yards, and he's right in the prime years of his career. I rather keep DK Metcalf and pay him a long-term deal than have to trade for Myles Garrett, give up all those draft picks, and move on from DK Metcalf as well. Let me be clear. No one, and I mean nobody, is going to sit here and argue and say that DK Metcalf is a better player than Myles Garrett. That's not what we're saying at all. But we're saying, based on all things that are not created equal here, that I rather just go ahead and roll with DK and keep my draft capital and pay DK than I would have to move on from DK, move on from draft capital, bring in Myles Garrett, and pay Myles Garrett. I think I've made my point clear there. Pick one for Seattle. Would you rather go the DK route or would you rather go the Myles Garrett route? You only have 2 lanes to choose from here. Type DK for DK Metcalf, type MG for Myles Garrett way in the comments section and let us know. One final point before we wrap up on this. I think it's very important that we say this before we end today's show. Remember, there's still one big priority for this Seahawks team. The thing that is holding them back from getting to the postseason next year, and that's the offensive line. We could talk about guys like Myles Garrett all we want and look at getting defensive help, and I do think Seattle is going to find some defensive help. But the first issue that needs to be addressed is fixing this offensive line, and then you can take care of the other things. And if they do that, then things are going to be A-okay. They're going to be in great shape. But let's start with that before we, spend too much on defensive players and figure out that situation. Appreciate you joining us on this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today. If you made it to the end of today's video, you know what that means? That means you are a real one. Spam a real one in the comments section. I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.